Welcome to Resume the Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Page, and I'm here to spread the message that you can, in fact, be happy in your career. I'm a former executive recruiter turned career coach, and I am obsessed with learning about why people have chosen their career, what led them to that decision, and how they achieved happiness in the process. So, come join the ongoing conversation that exposes you to career paths of all origins with one thing in common: happiness. So, press play and let's resume the conversation with this week's episode. So today, our guest on Resume the Podcast is Dorothy Mashburn. She is a professional negotiator whose goal is to inspire and educate women, enabling them to proactively navigate their careers with confidence. And by providing them with world-class negotiation knowledge and strategies, she strives to create a day where the gender pay gap no longer exists, which is hopefully soon. She has negotiated hundreds of business deals over the last 20 years, and she is also currently a hiring manager who reviews countless applications, interviews talented professionals, and manages multinationally. What sets her apart is her unique perspective, combining her roles as a hiring manager, budget designer, and a negotiation expert. So she's passionate about empowering professional women by helping them understand their market value, negotiate their salaries, and maximize their job offers. And what I love about Dorothy is that she is currently in corporate and on the side coaches women on negotiation. So she's like in it and coaching, which I love because you're like in real time understanding like what's going on. So Dorothy, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here, Courtney. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I was lucky enough to go on Dorothy's podcast, which we're going to talk about later on, which is awesome. But to start out, I ask everybody the same question. So if you, Dorothy, were at a fun dinner party and someone started chatting you up who you don't know, and they inevitably always ask, "What do you do?" What would your response be?
Yeah, that's a great way to start this, actually. And I'm going to steal this, Courtney, for my
Go for it.
I would say I'm a negotiation coach who is on a mission to close the gender pay gap. Courtney, did you know that at current rates, we are scheduled to close the gender gap in 80 years? So we're going to be very old or dead and gone.
Or dead.
Close the gap. So
Yeah.
This is my primary mission. I have over the years, 20 years in corporate, learned the ropes the long and hard way. And my mission is to get people faster, further with the knowledge that I've accumulated through trial and error. And I'm deeply passionate about it. And anyone who wants to know or knows me, I'm very generous with tips and tricks to help you navigate the corporate world and standing up for your worth.
Yeah, I love that. We're going to circle back to all the negotiation tips because I know you're chock full of them and I know that we all need to hear them. But I also want to know, when you were a kid, what did you want to be?
As a kid, so I grew up in a province under the foothills of the Himalayas. So this being in corporate America was not something that I even had visibility to as a kid. So at one point, I wanted to be in the Indian Foreign Service, which I think I always sort of wanted to go places, see the world globally, and the foreign services would allow me to do that. My father is a police officer and he went through like the Indian police service. And I was like, the next level up is because I wanted to beat my dad. I'm a little bit competitive and it's the foreign service. So I would do that.
Okay. So are your parents still in India or did you all come over? They are.
No,
okay.
It's just me over here. Yeah.
So when did you come?
I was 18. So I came here for my undergrad studies and met my husband here and ended up staying.
Okay, so take us through that whole thing. So like, why did you come to the States? What did you want to study? How did you get to the States? For anybody who's listening who is looking into something like that, how did you facilitate that move?
I went to a boarding school in India, and schooling up to high school there is very well set up. The education system is very well organized. But after that, you're pretty much on your own. So the colleges are hit or miss. The education system is not great. It's very inexpensive to go, so everybody goes. But at the same time, you don't have the quality of education that you have in the West. And so I was looking around, and I guess when I look back, I've always been curious about what it would be like to study in a different country. I was going to all of these college fairs that they would have in New Delhi at that time. There was colleges from Australia, colleges from England, colleges from the US. And there was a little tiny college out of Missouri who really struck a chord with me because they were very understanding of the experience of a foreign student in a new country. They also offered tiny scholarship for living expenses. And and it was in the Midwest. So the culture was less of a shock, if you will. It's a Midwest culture. So that sealed the deal for me. And next 6 months, worked with immigration, got all my paperwork done. And I landed here a cold day in January. And yeah, the rest is history.
So what did you come to study?
I came to study actually communication. So they had a mass communication department. I ended up switching to accounting because as a foreign student, what I found out is if you graduate from mass communication, there are not a lot of companies that would hire you or sponsor your visa. They would hire you, but they wouldn't sponsor a visa. But in the business department, there was more precedent of companies sponsoring your visa. So I ended up in the business school and then doing my accounting, but always wanted to be in front of a mic and talking and doing public speaking. But that had to wait because I wanted to look at it practically and say, if I wanted to stay in this country, what could be some of the steps that I needed to do?
Cool.
Yeah, so I graduated with accounting. And then at that time, they had just changed the rules to where to be a CPA, you needed your degree, your bachelor's, as well as another, I don't know how many years, 44 hours to get enough credits to go take your CPA exam. And that's when I went and got my MBA. But after my MBA, the world opened up to me and I was like, no, I don't want to do accounting. And so things changed from there.
So what made you want to go into the MBA program?
I saw myself as I needed to get another 44 hours. So every decision, now that I look back, I didn't know about it that time, was very practical based. It's okay. If I get more hours of accounting, I don't necessarily branch out into other departments or other functions. But if I get in my MBA, I'll get a holistic view of the business setting or business world. And so I ended up getting my MBA as a means to bridge that 44-hour gap, as well as widen my view of what business in US looks like.
Okay. All right. Cool. So when you came out of that MBA program, where did you end up?
It's a very interesting journey, I guess, because I graduated in 2002 and the economy was in a really bad shape at that time. I think the internet, the e-commerce bubble had burst. And so none of the consulting firms who I was targeting in the beginning of the program were hiring. There was a huge collapse. And so I ended up working for Walmart. They had a management training program at that time, and they pretty much put you through the ringer, but they really teach you the nuts and bolts of business. You run a store, you run every single function within Walmart's purview. And it was hard work, but looking back, I think that really set the foundation of my work ethic and my ability to go find answers when there are no easy answers. And so I'm very grateful for that experience.
Yeah. And that's very interesting. And just for anyone who is listening, those really big companies, like obviously Walmart is huge, they have amazing infrastructure. So if you're new to business and you don't know what you want to do or how to do it, quote unquote, no one knows how to do it when they come out of college, right? Those big companies are a great place to learn the ropes because it's so organized and there's just so much experience within these huge multinational companies that it's a great place to, like I said, learn the ropes and figure out kind of where you want to go. And also and I wonder if Walmart had this, but a lot of them will also have like a rotation option. Did they have that for you?
Yep, they did. Yeah.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. Right now, I know Enterprise has one too. I'm sure big companies have it, but they basically have you shadow a store manager for a while because that's the operations, right? You can't be too proud to not be at the store level. Really, even if you have an MBA, it's something you need to know. So they have you shadow a store manager, shadow a distribution center lead, because those massive distribution centers that are running off operations is very complex. It's like running a small country. They have you shadow.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, exactly. It's massive. It's eye-opening. And then buying function where you are negotiating with big suppliers like a Procter and Gamble or a GE Electronics. So they basically give you, it's a mini MBA in itself. It's very powerful.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Something I want to go back to really quick that we kind of grazed over is your South Asian background. So if there's anybody listening who comes from a similar area or just anyone who's just not American by birth or whatever, how did that cultural difference affect you and impact your decisions? And how does it continue to business?
I think the biggest thing was feeling like an outsider. There were so many stories and cultural quips and humor that as an outsider, you're just not privy to. So that tended to make me feel less than or less capable. And I think it was my own filters looking back. Nobody made me feel that way, but I felt that way because I couldn't participate in the jokes about 80s culture or 90s culture. I had to be quiet. And I also put some self-imposed roadblocks in my own mind saying they wouldn't care that I had a pet monkey when I was growing up, or they wouldn't care if I rode an elephant. I mean, now that I look back, they would have cared. They would have loved to hear that. But I put those kind of blocks on myself. And I think anybody who comes fresh, I think just be open. Don't assume that they won't care, that you will get such a rich and varied experience if you open or be open to sharing and saying, I don't know, teach me about what was like growing up with 16 Candles or Breakfast Club or all of those things, or going to vacation in Disney. So I guess that's one thing. And then, so I have to remind myself about that even today. Somebody's talking about music reference that I have no clue what they're talking about. I have to have the humility to say, look, I didn't grow up here. So tell me about it. What was it? Just be curious. And I have to remind myself about that even today.
And what did it bring for you? I mean, like what strengths and what are some of the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like strengths or advantages. That's the word I'm looking for. Advantages that having this different perspective and this different cultural upbringing, what advantages has that presented to you?
Yeah, that's a good question, Courtney. I think one is I can say, look, I'm new to this. Even if maybe somebody else who's been here a long time may feel, I don't know if pride is the right word, but not have the courage maybe to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I do have that advantage to say, I don't know what you're talking about, and really understand the nuts and bolts of a problem versus somebody who's like saying, oh yeah, and then trying to solve a problem without fully understanding it. And I think one of my things that I am known for in my corporate world is I'm a problem solver. And that I think is because if you can throw me any problem and I'll solve it because I can ask those questions and feel completely fine. Like it doesn't faze me.
Yeah. Yes. I love that because I do think so much of our confidence is stamped out because we're just afraid to ask the question, which that's a great segue actually to what you do now with negotiation, because I don't know, but I think in my experience, I think that has a place within this whole pay gap negotiation. So I'd like you to tell us about your pull, like what pulled you towards this pay gap, gender gap issue, so much so that you now coach people on it and you have a podcast about it. Like what about it really turned the knife with you?
So I'll go back to my upbringing. So I grew up in a society that was extremely paternalistic and or paternal. We would go to. So I told you my dad was in the Indian Police Service, so which meant that it's kind of like the army. You get posted into different parts of the country, and some of the places were very rural and didn't have a lot of literacy. And when you go in as a new kid into that school, every 2 years we would be in a new school. it would be like, we raise their hand to answer a question and people would give you stares like, girls don't raise their hand. Girls don't go to school. And so it was a very tough experience growing up. You got over it. You were resilient as a kid. And so when I came to America in 1998, I was like, yes, finally a land of equality, a land where everybody can speak their mind, raise their hands. And I found that not to be true beyond the surface, Courtney. And it was a shock to my very being, I guess, because I was like, wow, like even in what we consider most developed countries, we don't have equality. Women are still taking a second-rate backseat to men's success. Over the years, that just got more and more. I guess it's sad that we still don't have equality. And then I have so much negotiation experience just from working the corporate world. And I was like, I can use those skills and transfer that so I can help women. It's fine if you want to stay home, raise the kids. It's completely fine. No one's saying that. But if you wanted to do something different, you still have to fight in a world that's been built for men by men.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me the passion to say, I have negotiation skills and I want to empower. That's where we are at today.
So why did you zero in on negotiation as the kind of crux of this issue?
Yeah, to me, negotiation is in everything we do. Whether we say to our spouse, hey, I want to be a vice president, so I need support in handling the household things. So I think as we are talking about everything in our day-to-day lives or our corporate lives, negotiation is about understanding yourself and then standing up for what you believe is right for you. And it teaches you everything from communication to standing up for yourself to understanding what your other person knows and wants, and then finding a common ground. And it's about problem solving and it's about curiosity. So if I can teach this package to someone who is wanting to do something different with their lives, this is for lifelong. This can help them negotiate not just the salary, but also anything else that they want in their lives, a promotion, a project, something with their spouse, something with their parents. It's very powerful. And we lump it all into negotiation, but it's really about smart, intelligent problem solving. And very lovely.
Ooh, I love that. So, well, one thing that I just want to point out that I really love is that you kind of took a step back and realized that you zeroed in on what the catalyst for success can be, right? Which is negotiation. And then you took the step back and realized like you have this whole skill set that you can use outside of your corporate job, right? Like I'm sure you use it in your corporate job as well, but you can apply it and kind of go after this passion that you have on the side, which is something that I think that's so powerful in and of itself because so many people feel really stuck in their careers, right? They feel like they're working for someone else or that it's not really totally exactly what they want to do. And I love this because you're really like the embodiment of an employee entrepreneur where you're still employed. You still have that stability of that paycheck and benefits and all the things while doing this other thing that brings you so much joy. And I love that you're like this walking example of that. So that is very cool. One thing that came to mind is what is the biggest issue that women face in negotiation?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is advocating for ourselves. We've been either because of social programming or the way we are built. I don't know the biology or the neuroscience of it is, but social programming is a big one. We fear or we are too nervous about advocating for ourselves. We do amazing, and then there's research to support it when we are negotiating for someone else. So say if you're saying, I'm going to go to bat for my best friend, we are fantastic. We beat every single man out there in negotiating for that person. But when it comes to saying, hey, I want this, or hey, this is unfair because this was my idea that somebody else took, or I delivered this project and my boss took all the credit, we are abysmal with it. And I'm saying this with love, right? We put ourselves second. We are too humble, and that allows allows other people to take credit for our work or take the glory of all the hard work that we did. I think that is the biggest hurdle over and over that keeps coming up.
Why? Like, why does that keep coming up?
I believe it's mostly social programming. I'll give you a story. We were at a block party a couple of days ago, and there was a little girl, and she was maybe 3 or 4. And then there were some boys that were like 7 or 8, 9 or 10, like they were older than her, and they were throwing little toy axes. She was doing it with every ounce of her being, right? And she was getting it right like once every 7 or 10 throws. And the boys were, of course, like going at it and they were hitting everything. And so she would have a little sad face when she missed. But then when she hit it, she was like cheering for herself as loudly as can be, throwing her arms in the air. It was just sweet. And then her dad was watching. And of course, her dad hates it every time she has a sad face. So he puts her up to the front, like about 10 paces ahead of the boys. And now and I'm just watching this, right? And then now she hits the target almost every single time. What's changed with her is she doesn't clap for herself anymore. Because I think even though she's so young, she knows that she's at an advantage with the boys being so far. And she feels, oh no, I am getting an unfair advantage here. And so I may not clap for myself. And I think and she's only 3 years old. So this sort of kind of protective behavior from dads, and it's well-meaning, well-intentioned, right? There's no blame here. From a very young age, teaches us that maybe we are not as strong. Maybe we need to take a second seat. Maybe we need someone to protect us. Maybe we need someone to pick us. All of those social conditioning that we have from such a young age, I think it like programs us to be that second-class citizen. And I'm saying this with love and affection for all the dads out there. Like they have good intentions, but sometimes that holds us back in adult life.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I have a 3-year-old daughter. So as you're talking, I'm like imagining her. And I also have an 18-month-old son. So I'm thinking like, I wonder how different that would have been if it was a 3-year-old boy as opposed to a girl. And would the dad have also kind of pushed him up front, or would it have been more of a be a man up kind of situation? Yeah. Because it does start super young. And I know I can just see when they do something that young and they're proud of themselves, it's like the purest joy.
Yes.
So I can totally see her. And so that's so interesting. What's like the biggest misconception that women have when it comes to negotiation?
Yeah. I think the biggest one I would say is thinking that it is a high octane Hollywood style tough negotiation where it's give me $50. No, give me $20.
Like sliding it across the table, kind of.
Exactly. Like in Suits or all of those, it's not like that. So please don't fear negotiation, because the best way I can describe it is problem solving. And the feminine leadership traits are very well aligned with problem solving. So we have high empathy, we have high understanding, we have high curiosity. All of those things lend very well to solving a problem. So if we reframe negotiation from this kind of thriller type situation where you have to be super aggressive, where it's none of that. If you're extremely aggressive, you actually do worse in negotiation than if you are curious and have a position of humility, because you can unearth a lot of golden nuggets, what I call golden nuggets, which are hidden pieces of information about the other party that gives you strength in a negotiation. So don't fear or don't think about negotiation as something that you can't conquer. It doesn't even have to be something about conquering. It's really about understanding.
Okay, so when I hear the word negotiation, I immediately go into it's like a power play, right? It's like a power dynamic. But you're saying it's not. What is it if it's not a power play?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think one thing we should all remember is negotiation. All the books are written by men. Right. So all the language is masculine, right? All the language.
That's so true.
So I think there's validity to you thinking that it's a power play completely, because those are the words that are used, right? Like, how do you get power in a negotiation, or how do you get leverage? All of those are strong masculine words, and we use it today. I use it, right? So, but let's take a step back. So what is power in a negotiation, right? You could reframe that as, what do I know about the other person, right? The more power you have in a negotiation. And we do this all the time. Say we are talking about advocating for our child at school. You want to know as much as you can possibly know about what's happening. What's this teacher like? What's the school like? Those are things that give you power in a negotiation. But you're doing that naturally. But when we say negotiation, people clamp up because they worry that it is that high octane power play. It's really not. It's when I write my book, I'm going to provide new words for all of this. It's like leverage can just be more information about the other party.
Yeah, like information is power, right?
Information is power. We know that, right?
Yeah.
But when we say leverage, all of a sudden it's, okay, this must be something really scary, like you have lots of money or lots of like bodyguards around you, and that's power, that's leverage. But it's really not, it's information.
Yeah. And you're hitting on this a little bit, and it's so funny because I wrote this down and I was like, I wonder if this will come up. Then I'm going to read you what I wrote. Leverage is in the question, but how can women leverage their femininity in a negotiation? So if you're not familiar, for those listening, if you're not familiar with the feminine and masculine energies and what that is, in a nutshell, it's like hunting, and although women were the hunters, or lionesses are the hunters, right? But that aggressive kind of go get 'em energy is more like masculine, and the sit receptive kind of energy is more feminine. And you listed a couple, like higher empathy. And I think there's even some, oh my gosh, what was it? Iceland, where it was like they have all women leaders. Their economy is like amazing. But can you kind of like break that down a little bit, go into a little bit more depth about that kind of feminine energy and how to bring that to a negotiation table?
Yeah, absolutely. So empathy is a big one, right? So I won't go into too much technicalities on negotiation, but the way you think about a negotiation, if you think about it as a one pizza pie, right? A masculine energy, generally speaking, and these are stereotypes, I will admit it, but generally speaking, they'll say, okay, I want 60% of that pizza and you have 40% of that pizza. But if you are curious and if you are in that problem-solving mindset, you might think, okay, let me ask you this question. Do you want pizza? And they'll say, yeah, but I really like the cheese. That's why I want 60% of the pizza, right? So I say, oh, I have a bag of cheese here. Would you like this? And can I have all of the pizza? Right? So you're problem solving. So it's like really understanding what the other party wants and saying, it's really not about the pizza. It's about the pizza plus the cheese. So now I was originally going to get only 50% maybe at max, right? Because we would argue back and forth and say, no, I spare 50. But now I get 100% of the pizza, which I want, and they get 100% of the cheese, which is what they want. So see how the value has gotten bigger than just that pizza pie, right? So in order to be able to identify what that bag of cheese is, feminine energy comes very handy. And that's asking questions, being humble, being curious, trying to have empathy to understand what it is that other person wants. Because that's the hardest thing, understanding what is it that we want, what is it that they want. Once we do that, we can actually extract more value in a negotiation than the masculine energy. Does that, I mean, it's a lot of negotiation trying to boil it down to like really short clips here.
Yeah, no. And I'm just thinking of even when you sit across the table from someone, right, that initiates this kind of tete-a-tete, like head-on-head, really like aggressive, almost like survival primal instincts kind of kick in, where it's like a fight, right? And the response to that is defense. So what you're saying is really coming from an angle, like coming from the side, is a lot less, well, yes, aggressive, but less intimidating, and will also allow the person that you're negotiating with to let their guard down a little bit. Like they're not, they don't feel attacked, right? Like they're feeling like it's a conversation that they can just have, as opposed to having to defend their whatever 60% of the pizza. Yeah. So I love that. And also it's just more fun to do it. It's not as stressful.
It's not stressful at all. It is really reframing it in our minds to say, let's not put that person on the defensive. Let's really understand what is it that they want. Why do they want 60%? And then really looking at other ways to make them whole while you also get your piece. Now, one point I will make is, say you're negotiating with our former President Trump, right? If that's the style, like who's very, very strong, very powerful, high leverage, very masculine energy, you've got to learn. This is why we teach negotiation, is you've got to learn how to protect your territory. So you've got to be adaptable. And women are great at this. Like they are very adaptable. We've learned this, right? Over the years of surviving in a man's world of, okay, if I can't come at it from a side saying, okay, what is it that you want? I am being attacked. How do I protect my territory and extract value? And this is why we teach negotiations to say, learn the tricks, learn the hardball tactics, learn the power plays, learn the leverage. You don't have to use it, but you can identify it and then find ways to counter it.
So what would you say if someone is dealing with a very highly masculine, aggressive negotiation person on the other side of the negotiation table?
You have a few weapons in your arsenal, so to speak. One is humor. Wow, we're gonna fight here. I thought we were gonna have a problem-solving discussion. Women are great at that, right? Diffusing. You can use that. You can also just completely ignore it. It's like usually if somebody has this power play mentality, they will try to demean you, right? They will say, oh, sweetie, you want to sit at the big boys table? And this has happened, right? So this is true examples that I'm pulling from. Is thanks for letting me on, man. I appreciate it. Let's go. Completely not even let that phase you. And now sometimes it hurts, like when they find the button, but what I will say is, hey, I need a restroom break. Go take a deep breath. Just don't let them see you being affected, because then they will know that's your button. So that's how you protect yourselves. And I mean, people might be thinking, oh man, this sounds scary, but it's really not, especially if you can diffuse it and say, if you identify it, it doesn't have power anymore. You can say, trying this hardball tactic of ruffling my feathers, or this hardball tactic of bluffing or lying. Then those are the weapons in a hard negotiator's arsenal. And so when you identify them, there's only like 10 or 12 of them. There's not like unlimited. Okay, I know what you're doing here. You can diffuse it.
Yeah. And I keep thinking of body language. Like as you're talking, I keep thinking of body language, and how I remember when it was like a body language conference or something, like information session. And the guy that was doing it had asked who women are much better at reading body language signals than men. Why is that? Nobody could get it. And the answer is because of babies. Like we have been for millennia, have been having babies. And part of that is reading these nonverbal signals and trying to figure out what this human being who can't speak yet needs for survival. So that like ability is so, even if you don't have kids, like that is so ingrained in you.
Innate. Yeah.
Yes. You need to trust that. If you are getting something off of the way they're moving or the way they're sitting, you're right. Just trust it. You are right.
Yes.
And that also, on the flip side, using your own body language to, like you said, diffuse a situation, sitting back. And I was listening to another podcast where it was like steepling the hands, like putting your fingertips together and just like sitting back. It's like one of the most powerful postures because it's so passively confident.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's so interesting. And for some reason, as I'm talking about that, and maybe because your dog was in the background, I was thinking of the dog whisperer. Yeah. When we got our dog, we binged that show. But so much of that show, I'm just thinking like this totally applies. Oh my gosh, calm assertive, right? Calm assertive.
Calm assertive.
With like dogs.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the same, that you can kind of carry that energy into the negotiation table, just like calm, assertive energy.
Yes.
Right? No, is that?
Yes. It's absolutely true. Yeah. I love the fact that you brought up body language, and it's great to know why we are better, but absolutely true. Women are, with research-backed studies, are more attuned to body language changes. And it's actually a weapon, is because even if somebody is aggressive at you, but if their body language says that they're still in the negotiation, they're not about to walk out, they're just ruffling your feathers, they're still talking and engaging, which still means that you're in play. Everything is in play. They're just acting out, trying to see what buttons they can push on you. So that's a great trick, to use your body language reading abilities to know, is this a real fight? Are they actually mad, or are they just trying a tactic on me? They're just, then they're doing it, then they're in it. They're just ruffling you.
Yeah. I want to talk about your podcast, but first I just want to hear just any advice you have for women who just feel really, even knowing all of this, going in, hearing this podcast, and even if they listen to your podcast and they have all of this information at their fingertips and they're processing it, even if they have all of that, what advice do you have for women who still just feel like so intimidated when when they have to go in and negotiate like their salary, for example. If they're in an interview, let's say, and the compensation comes up, people immediately kind of clam up. How can somebody kind of just go in without feeling like they're going to vomit?
Yeah. I think the best weapon that we have, and again, I'm speaking in masculine terms, but the best weapon that we have is our ability to advocate for others. So what you need to do if you feel like you're about to vomit, here's one trick, is think about the person you love most in the world. It could be your kid, your best friend, your sister, whoever it is, your mom, dad. And then you're saying, okay, what if I think about I'm negotiating for that person? In your mind, just say, I'm advocating for them, not me, for them, right? And then go at it. You are going to be 30 to 40% more successful in getting when you do that. That is just simply tricking your mind, nothing else. Just go that way.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. That actually brought up, I was talking to somebody about oh my gosh, what was I talking about? It was essentially the same idea where they had to reach out for marketing or something. And the advice was create a second email and it's still you, but make up a name for a pretend assistant and reach out to people as the assistant for you. And it's like the same idea. Like you'll end up feeling through this kind of mask of and working on behalf of someone.
Yes.
It like switches that whole feeling of self-worth almost. It brings that whole self-worth into it where you don't you don't have to tackle it. Like you can leave that therapist or whatever, and you can get on with your day.
Yes. Yeah, we still need to do that work, but for getting the salary, do this trick, do this, and you will win every single time.
I love that. I love that so much. Okay, so tell us about your podcast.
Yeah. So my podcast is Salary Negotiations Made Simple. And in it, we talk about all things technicalities on negotiation. But more importantly, we talk about how do you find those tips and tricks to get your self-worth going? Because that is the basis of everything. Like we have to believe that we are worth more. We are worth the investment. We are worth advocating for ourselves. And most of the times we go along and to get along, and we don't even think about how we're undervaluing ourselves. We're just grateful for the work that is thrown our way and not ever asking for money to be paid and having this kind of mindset of the money is icky. So we deal with all of those things. It's a holistic way. I call it Salary Negotiations Made Simple because if you do all of this work, and negotiating your salary is extremely easy. That's the easy part of all of it. And so I'm very humbled and honored that I have guests from all over. Courtney, you have guests, people who work with their coaches, their executive leaders, their Coast Guard commanders, all of these women, and in fact, even men who are about equity and making sure that nobody feels left behind in our society. So it's a great listen. There's lots of diverse opinions and I love hosting it.
Yeah. And I was very happy to be on her podcast and she's a great host. And I think it's so needed. It's just such a needed topic to discuss. And I love that you kind of get to the root of it, which is self-worth, which is really where it's all tied into. And I love that you have men on also, because there is this kind of feeling of we can't work alone in a vacuum, right? Because whether or not we want to, we will be working with men and they have a wonderful perspective as well. This isn't like a man bashing situation, but I think the gap is working together towards the same thing. And also what you're doing, which is bringing awareness to the issue that is still an issue in this like first world country, right? Which was, I love that story that you told, how it was just such a like weird shock to you that in America, and I had spent time in India and I think we discussed that a little bit.
Right.
And at least when I was there many years ago, there was this, I don't know how to like even describe it, like America, this like kind of magical land of opportunity. And so it's so interesting that when you came here, you were like, what's going on? Okay, cool. So I have 3 kind of final rapid fire questions. So what is the best career advice you've ever been given?
I think find your sponsors. Find your sponsors who will take care of you, put you under their wing, and tell you when you're being a knucklehead, right? There's so many times it's, I don't want to work on that project. No, don't be a knucklehead. Go work on that project because that's going to give you visibility or that's going to give you X, Y, and Z. So you need those people who will tell you the truth. It's really opened a lot of doors for me. And it's been men and women. Yeah, people have been very generous with giving me guidance.
Love that. What is your current favorite daily practice?
Oh, you are going to like it, Courtney. It's my 10 minutes of meditation in the morning. And I think it's not, I don't touch my phone. I just sit in quiet. And sometimes because I'm not used to it, I'll have my guided meditation on my iPad. It's just an app and I just center myself and it really helps me set the mood for the rest of the day.
Which app do you use?
Guided Mind.
Guided Mind. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for it. Yeah. I need a guided meditation because otherwise I just don't, I haven't cultivated the ability to not, especially in the morning. And what is your favorite quote?
Ooh, my favorite quote is The Man in the Arena or Woman in the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt. I have to, hold on. Let me get it.
Sorry, I love to ask this question because I just love quotes. Like when I was a kid, there was this website, you could go to this website, brainyquotes.com. It's still around. It was around in 1998 or 1999 on my ridiculous family computer. And I would just spend hours reading quotes. I love them. I just love asking people. Because I just think it's such a nice little window into who they really are. Yeah.
It's a long quote, but I'll only read the first few lines.
Okay.
All right. So Courtney, my favorite quote is by Teddy Roosevelt. It's called Man in the Arena. And I'm going to read you the first few lines. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. So that is my all-time favorite. And it says man, but I took the liberty to say woman in the arena
as well. Yeah. Love. That's awesome. I love that one. You got to get your hands dirty, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And don't just sit in your armchair and plan for other people. Get in there, get in the arena. You'll be very thankful. It's worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. This was such a fun episode and I learned a lot. I hope listeners learned a lot. Go check out Dorothy's podcast, which is available on
all of the favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you listen to your podcast.
Amazing. Cool. So check her out. We're going to include all of the stuff in the show notes so you can find Dorothy. If you have any negotiation questions, hit her up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I'm so grateful for your precious time and energy. And if anything resonated with you, please feel free to share with a friend and subscribe. If you're interested in career coaching, I would love to hear from you. Email me at courtney@resume-careers.com and follow me on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page. Thank you so much and see you next week.